But before starting, like always, क्या करना होता है ऑडियंस को?
इस वीडियो को लाइक करना, अपने दोस्तों में शेयर करना, इस चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करना। हमने मेंबरशिप्स लॉन्च करी हैं, उसको जाके आप चेकआउट करिए। और हमारा जो फ्री टेलीग्राम ग्रुप चैट है उसको हम लोग कमेंट से पिन कर देंगे, वहां जाके दोस्त बनाइए और उनसे बातें करिए।
तो भाई, विदाउट एनी फर्दर डू, सिट बैक, एंजॉय दिस अमेजिंग पॉडकास्ट। Also, speaking about the teams in particular, I am assuming that stuff like the auction, the scouting process for the auction itself, we were also speaking off stage how the impact of players, how much they are contributing towards their team, that is all quantified by data analytics and data analysts. How is that happening exactly? And could you share some insights on how is this carried out and how do teams make decisions based on this?
So that's a good question, and it's it's a very important thing because scouting and auction is the first step of building a team, right? So you have to be whatever bets you're taking, so you have to be really sure about why you're taking these bets, right? It could go right, it could go wrong, but when you are placing the bet, you have to be clear why you are placing the bet, right? So that is where the whole process of scouting and auction plays a very important role. Now, before we get to data, so there are these scouts. These scouts, the idea of these scouts is to identify players who are special, right? So who had proper coaching. So these scouts, one day they would be in West Bengal watching a match, or next day they could be down south Bangalore somewhere, right? The life of a scout is very uncertain. They have to, they are made to travel. That is their whole idea. So the scout observes, so he spots, so these are the particular players, right? Because there's no way you can analyze thousands of players, right? So the job of this scout is to identify which players' metrics to look after, right? So let's say the scout in Pondicherry, he shortlisted 20 players, right? Now then comes the analysts. So in analysts also there are types of analysts. So there could be video analysts who are purely working on the videos. Like for example, let's say you are assigned KL Rahul, you are the video analyst of KL Rahul. The job of a video analyst is cut down the videos where KL Rahul has played and then share insights on every single clip. Is there something that you can add notes to it, right? So this was not a good shot, this was a good shot, right? You can keep adding to it. So this is the job of a video analyst. And then there are people who have access to the grassroots level data of a particular player. So nowadays we have crick heroes who can give you, at any given player you have data, right? And then of course BCCI also collects. So there's a bcci.tv website, so where you can get all domestic data, right? So whether it's Syed Mushtaq Ali Trophy, Vijay Hazare Trophy, Ranji Trophy, all kinds of matches, you will find lots of data sets there, right? So if broadcasting is available, you will get proper video data. If broadcasting is not available, then there could be local broadcasters. So that will be a challenge. Like for example, in states like Jammu, right? So it's difficult to have broadcasters. So that's why people collect local data providers. So they connect with the local types. So if the match is not telecasted on Star Sports. So of course, there are a lot of data gaps also. Like sometimes you get data, sometimes you don't. Right. So with whatever data that is available, so the analysts, what they do is they design some metrics. Like for example, let's say control percentage. So if the batsman has played 100 balls, how many shots did he play with a control? So that becomes a metric. So his control percentage is this. Or there could be a metric about false shot. Right. So false shot is very good from a bowler perspective because the bowler is able to make the batsman play a false shot, right? Make the batsman play edge, right? So this bowler is able to induce 85% false shot or 30% false shot. That's a good metric, right? So there is data, and on top of that data, you come up with some metrics, right? So what are some of the metrics too? So control is a metric, false shot is a metric, or if it's for a fielder, how many catches did he drop? How many catches did he take? How many runs did he save? So that's a metric, right? So you are trying to chase these metrics depending on the role that the players are playing. So basically they identify openers, middle order, lower middle order, tailenders, or anchor roles, or hitters, right? So they identify power hitters, right? So they identify a segment of players. So for example, let's say RCB, right? So RCB does not have good death bowlers. So that's a known thing for everybody, right? So
Is that the fan inside you speaking?
yeah, so that's a known fact for everybody, right? So now for a death bowler, what are the metrics to look into, right? If you are bowling in death, so obviously picking wickets is not the priority in death. You want to restrict the number of runs, right? So but in power play it's not. In power play it's all about picking wickets. In power play, if you pick 3 wickets, you have 85% chance of winning a game, right? So power play is about picking wickets, death over is all about controlling runs, middle overs is also about containing runs plus holding the wickets. So every phase of play, every format has a demand, what is expected from a player. So according to that, metrics are designed, and these analysts are all chasing those metrics, right? So iterating these metrics, right? So if it's about picking the right fielder, you have these metrics. If it's about going after power hitter, these are the metrics. Opener, these are the metrics. So that is how they design. And then of course internally, what are the combination? That's how you already have Virat as an opener, right? So who would be a better partner for him? Right? So you take those considerations also.
So when teams go into the IPL auction, they actually look for all these metrics for all these players and then decide whom they want to get.
Yes, probably I would have explained only 25% of it. There's so much more. For example, they build auction simulators. Like, so how much money do you need to keep for this particular player? And so what's the range? So they just simulate which teams go after. Like for example, let's say Rishabh Pant, right? Now they actually simulate systems which does the bidding.
Okay, so this is fully automated.
Yes, fully automated.
Damn.
Auction simulators, right? So they identify what would be the price range of that player, right? So which teams would be expected to go after him, right? So who would need him, who does not have a keeper, right? So they go after these kind of metrics also. And then they do, chat with players also, yeah.
Yeah, perhaps that's the reason why IPL teams want a whole month to prepare for the auction.
Yes. It starts all the way at probably 6 months down the line before the auction date is announced.
Okay, so let me just summarize what you said and correct me if I'm wrong. And I'll try to do a bit of it in Hindi also so that the audience is also feeling comfortable with it. Let me know if you don't understand, okay?
Yeah.
So what happens is basically teams के scouts होते हैं जो कि ईयर राउंड जो है स्टेडियम्स में जाके प्लेयर्स को देख रहे होते हैं. वो प्लेयर्स जो उनको पसंद आते हैं, द प्लेयर्स आर दे लाइक, वो उनको स्काउट करके एनालिस्ट को रिकमेंड करते हैं कि अब आप इनके डेटा को देखिए, एंड अमंगस्ट दोज प्लेयर्स जिनके डेटा इनसाइट्स हमें अच्छे लग रहे होंगे, बीट अ डेटा एनालिस्ट, बीट या वीडियो एनालिस्ट, सब मिलके एक टीम काम करती है, उन प्लेयर्स को फिर वो टारगेट करते हैं इन दी ऑक्शन कि हमने इन प्लेयर्स को स्काउट करा है, दे कुड बी अ पोटेंशियली बिग शॉट फॉर अस गोइंग इन फ्यूचर. इज दैट करेक्ट?
डेफिनेटली यस.
सो इस स्काउटिंग के चलते हुए हैव यू एवर सीन any big purchase happening in the IPL who was not that big of a name earlier but then eventually became a big name?
Recently, Shashank, Singh and Ashutosh, right? So I've heard about them even before they were big names. I've heard it from the network that I knew, right? So they had, as I said, right? So people are looking for game changers, right? So like, who can change the match on their own, right? So these are that type of players. And if you look at their performance also, it actually reflected, right? So they are able to change the matches whether they play for 1 over, whether they play for 5 overs, they have their impact sort of, right? So yeah, so these are the couple of players that I've seen, like even before they became famous, from scouts to, so I heard about these names probably 2 years ago.
Achha, there's a very common misconception that I also had, that stats, when people say stats are not everything, what they are saying is that you cannot calculate the impact that a player has. You can just check that he has scored this many runs and this many balls, but what the situation was, what his exact impact was, you cannot calculate with that. But you are saying that it is actually, like, people can calculate that as well.
Yes, actually people calculate only that, like, because they are more interested in that. Because all the other metrics, like your averages, strike rates, they don't tell you a story, right? So they are just a picture, right? So for a given period of time, this is the strike rate, this is the average, right? So not outs, all of that, right? But impact actually tells you a story. Whether the player actually made an impact, so then his values will be positive. If he has not made an impact, it would be close to 0. If he is actually not contributed, his values will be negative, So that gives you more clarity, and this impact considers, so I mean averages, strike rates, all of them, they don't consider match situation or even the strength of a team, right? So whether you are playing against Australia, Bangladesh, it does not matter, they don't reflect, correct, right? So but this impact calculation, it actually counts into match situations, right, or strength of the team, right? So who's the opponent bowler, right? So what's the chance of him picking up a wicket? All of that is considered here, right? So at a deeper level, impact is one of the major metrics compared to all the other runs or runs per innings or averages, strike rates.
आई थिंक इसका एक बहुत अच्छा एग्जाम्पल था अभी जब रमनदीप सिंह व्हेन ही वाज प्लेइंग फॉर केकेआर दिस सीजन, देयर वाज अ स्टैट दैट उन्होंने पूरे सीजन में अप्रॉक्सीमेटली 100 बॉल्स के आसपास ही खेली हैं, बट द इम्पैक्ट दैट ही क्रिएटेड वाज सो बिग दैट नाउ ही इज रिटेन्ड बाय द टीम. I think like people do calculate the impact on the basis of the amount of contribution in their team and not just on hardcore stats that okay, he has played 100 balls, is his strike rate is above 150 or not, is his average is above 30 or not. I'm assuming that these stats are studied individually for all the players as well, depending on what position they're coming on to bat or to bowl.
Yeah, so I mean there are multiple ways of calculating this impact. So one way is how much did they contribute for the team to win or make the team win or increase the chances of winning the team. Like for example, let's say 12 needed of 3 balls. So if you played all the 3 dot balls, so that means you didn't help the team, right? But if you've hit couple of sixes, so that means you've changed the match even before the all balls are completed, right? So that means how much are you contributing to make the team win? So that is what impact is mostly about.
You know, I actually intend on diving deeper on this whole debate of who is creating more impact in the second segment. Right now, I'll elaborate further on the auction itself, because right now the flavor is exactly that amongst the audience and they want to know more about this. Let's actually dive deeper into it. I'm really enjoying your insights. You said how this is perhaps just 25% of what teams do when preparing for the auction. You also mentioned how this process starts approximately 6 months before the auction has even begun. So we spoke about scouting. We spoke about how those scouts are recommending those players to be taken in the auction. How do you simulate all these auctions and practice for it firstly? And then why do we see that some teams do better than the other teams if every one of them have their own scouts, have their own simulations? Why do some teams always perform better? We have seen a trend. With all due respect, RCB, I don't believe is one of them.
Definitely, yes.
But teams like CSK, like Mumbai, sometimes KKR, this time SRH as well, they do really good. Even Rajasthan Royals. So why do some teams keep on performing better if all of them have these luxuries at disposal?
I mean, so just to add a point, right? So numbers is not everything. That is more true for sports, right? So whatever the analysis, the systems, the processes, the simulators, I would say it's just 50% of it. The other 50% is all about the decisions that you make on the field or the decisions that you make on the auction table, right? So all the groundwork is accounts to 50% of the decision making process, right? So I mean here everyone has almost, I would say, equal amount of tech, equal amount of companies who can give you this type of data. So everyone is in a level playing field until this 50%. But the other 50% is what makes a difference, right? So do you have the right people on the auction table, right? So do you have that's what matters. For example, I would say for RCB, the biggest problem is the people sitting on the auction table, right? So that could be a problem, right? So maybe for other teams, let's say Gambhir is doing well because he's sitting on the auction table, right? The decision maker is actually sitting on the auction table. It makes a difference.
Can I just add one more point here? Just one more question. So when you mentioned that perhaps the people that are sitting at the auction table makes a difference, naturally I think the audience would ask कि यार ऐसा क्यों है? क्योंकि अगर सबके पास डेटा है, सबने ऑक्शन सिमुलेट कर रखा है, तो चाहे इंसान कोई भी हो, उनको पहले से पता है कि ऑक्शन में क्या पोटेंशियल टारगेट्स हो सकते हैं और उनकी प्राइस कितनी जा सकती है. तो जब वो ऑलरेडी वो चीज़ प्रैक्टिस कर चुके हैं, तो वो क्यों नहीं वो चीज़ रेप्लिकेट कर पा रहे ऑक्शन में? माई गेस इज कि it is not just about simulations. Auctions don't always turn out that way and you have to improvise, and वो improvisation की quality हर किसी में नहीं होती. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, definitely, right? So simulation is nothing but what it has seen historically, right? So it is trying to understand what happened in the past and trying to help you understand and estimate the future, but it never tells you the actual future, right? So things can, I mean, that's the true even for cricket also, right? See, if data can tell everything, why even watch a cricket match, right? We watch it because there's an uncertainty, right? That is what keeps us hooked to the game, right? So that makes a lot of difference, right? So you can tell the estimates, you can tell which bowler can get which batsman, but you can't 100% tell which ball, what way, right? So when is he getting out? So you can't tell, right? You will be there. So I can tell you from my experience, all the prediction algorithms that we've built are about 66% accurate.
That's actually very good, to be honest.
Yes, right? I mean, if you're at 66%, you are like absolutely, I mean, 66 to 70 is a world-class bracket.
So all the IPL teams working with David at least know that 66% is fixed in the auction and they know what is going to happen. I think more teams should contact you.
Let's see. Yeah. So, I mean, so people think that whenever you build any machine learning models, it has to be 90% accurate, 95% accurate. Oh, is it only 70, right? But in sports, even if you're at 60, 70, you are absolutely world class. Actually, even if you're at above 50%, you are good, right? So if you want to chase the world class, then 60 plus is the percentage. So what does it tell, right? So that means the other 35% is not accountable, right? So what the data says, right? So it's all in your hands. What the bowler does on the field, what the management does on the auction table, it's left to you, right? So yeah, I think it's the on-field decisions, on-table decisions that matter as well, like not just the simulators or the estimates.
Acha, about that auction thing, so you said how 66% can be predicted perhaps, or you are doing it currently. So the remaining 34%, I'm very curious to know, what does it constitute of primarily? The kind of cases where a player which was predicted to be at a certain price exceeds it or is shockingly lower?
Okay, so I mean the 66%, just to be clear, so 66% is, I just gave a average number across multiple predictions. It could be auction prediction, it could be who's winning, win prediction, score prediction, all of that, right? So 65, 66 is the golden mark out there, right? Now, okay, so now coming to the other 35%. So for example, in auction, there are, I think this year auction, there are about 1500 players who are enrolled into the auction, right? Now, the simulators or the prediction systems, they are all trained on the data that was fed, right? So purely, probably statistical data, right? May not be LLM data or what the scouts have seen. So because I believe in sports it always runs little behind, right? So compared to other world, so sports actually runs behind a few years, right? So when it comes to technology, right? So for example, let's say the scout has seen something special about that player, like for example, is capable of playing an offside delivery even to convert it to a leg side 6, something like that, right? So sometimes the data may not be able to reflect it, right? So for some reason, maybe tech was not available in that match, right? So you don't find that data there. So line and length was there, but the ball tracking was not there, right? So there could be all sorts of data gaps, but the scout has this information, right? So now these kind of things, they miss out in the whole prediction systems, right? So that these kind of gaps are there. So in these cases, what the scout does is he communicates it to the analyst, and then the analyst they communicate it to the management. Sometimes what they do is if they feel the need to collect data, the scouts call up the players for example, let's say I'm a scout in Pondicherry, I've seen some player X, so I communicate this to the RCB team, and the RCB team asks the player X to come to Chinnaswamy and have a session. They try to validate whether the points that were mentioned by scout are correct or wrong, right? So these kind of things also happen. So when they feel that this data needs to be collected, right?
So I was wondering, why don't the scouts are made to be, present in the auction and in fact play a major role while deciding the auction strategy. Why do we see owners and their kids, raising the paddle and not actually the people who matter?
Right. See, I mean, the scout, if you would, let's say two players are playing, tell us who's a better player on the ground, the scout does the job. But if you, in the moment you involve prize money, what's the auction, right? So who's bidding, that team is coming after him, this team is coming after him. There's too much calculation going around. And that too, it's not cricket, right? This has nothing to do with cricket, right? Scout's job is done once he identifies the talent, right? So to take a decision, he may not be the right person.
I also wonder, when you're preparing so intensely for your own auction strategy, say suppose I'm a part of RCB and मुझे अपनी टीम के लिए अभी से 20 players चाहिए because I've just retained 3 players. So I'll have simulations, I'll have scouts, I'll be running through all sorts of data. Now what happens is auction is a relative phenomena. You're not just sitting there fighting with yourself for a player. You have 9 other opponents that you have to fight and win over a player for. So I'm wondering, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the teams are also actively looking into the auction strategies or the potential auction strategies of other teams and trying to manipulate that as well?
No, it's not at that level, at least as far as I know, because that will be, insanely heavy, that too with 10 teams playing. Like, there could be like n number of combinations, right? So you are more worried about yourself rather than what other teams want to do, try to do. If you get into that, you're completely lost, right? So you will forget your strategy if you are going too much around.
So that's a limitation of resource essentially.
Yes.
I see.
अब सोचो अगर ये क्लिप इतनी बढ़िया थी तो पूरा का पूरा पॉडकास्ट कितना बढ़िया होगा।
तो अगर आपको इसी क्लिप का पूरा पॉडकास्ट देखना है तो यहाँ पे क्लिक करिए, और अगर आपको ऐसे ही और क्लिप्स बिंज वॉच करनी है तो यहाँ पे क्लिक करिए।